Hello and welcome to the third quarter video podcasts of the New Jersey Bank Marketing Committee of the New Jersey Bankers Association. I'm your host, Steve Lubetkin from ProfessionalPodcasts.com. This program was recorded October 2nd, 2008 in Clark, New Jersey, and is the first of two video podcasts from this third quarter series. In this program, Jay Esposito, Senior Vice President of BrandPartners, discusses effective branch marketing and branding strategies for banks. The program runs about 55 minutes. For information on New Jersey bankers, visit njbankers.com. For the Bank Marketing Committee, visit njbankmarketing.com. Now let's go to the lectern where Jim Kerr will introduce Jay Esposito.
I'm Jim Kerr, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers this morning on our topic of integrated marketing communications. Our first speaker is Jay Esposito, who's the Senior Vice President for BrandPartners. Jay offers a unique combination of project management and account executive qualities in his position as Senior Account Director. Bringing 17 years of experience as a senior consultant, Jay is responsible for strategic planning, concept development, execution, and maintenance of retail merchandising programs. Jay also provides retail sales orientation programs to bank employees, allowing them to optimize their merchandising programs by demonstrating how the banking office may be leveraged as a retail sales environment. So without further delay, let me introduce Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here today for a lot of reasons. One is that Jim and I go way back and that I'm originally a New Jersey native, 30 years removed, have siblings that live here, so it's always great to be back and see the great changes that have happened in the area. And I just want to comment on something that Norman mentioned, and that is that retail merchandising display programs and environmental graphics and digital programs and all of the tools that you have at your disposal to use in your franchise, in your branch network are very important. But at the end of the day, it really is about communication, and I was very happy to hear Norman mention that. These are really just tools that you use to convey your brand, what the bank is all about, what you stand for, what your connection to the community would be. And so what we're really looking to do when we work out a merchandising display program is kind of help the platform communicate more effectively to your customers what your value proposition is. And our company does that for banks all over the country, and one of our most active areas of participation is in the community bank area, primarily because you're making the decisions at that level, and we can go very rapidly and very aggressively with programs that are focused specifically on your needs and the way that you want to communicate to your customer base. So moving to the first slide, what I'm going to do here today is put a little bit of relationship together with the retail industry and how that affects the thinking in the financial industry. What we have here are some statistics. The first one on the upper left is a retail statistic. 70% of all shopping decisions are made at the point of sale. Now that is not necessarily true with a financial product, but the decision to whether the client is going to stay with you in the long term and create a relationship is formed at the branch level. So the branch becomes a very important area to use to communicate to your customers. The other statistics, I've shared these with retailers because one thing that we do at BrandPartners is we speak to retailers to try to understand how they effectively communicate to their customer base. And when I share that in the banking industry, 92% of all households in some way touch a branch monthly, 65% of the most profitable customers and 85% of your online users are touching you significantly on a monthly and weekly basis. That tells me that all those platforms are important to pay attention to and to tie those together in the context of the way you communicate to your client base. The first study that our designers did is they went out to some retailers, and one of the retailers we were very interested in was Target. If you look at the way Target approaches their marketplace, their strategy is to have high quality, stylishly designed products, but to do that at a reasonable price. And if you look at where the mass affluent market is going, if you hear the term Target, I bought it at Target, that's telling us that everybody, from the mass affluent all through the entire spectrum of customers, go to Target because the quality is good and the pricing is superior. The execution, of course, is unquestionable. The brand mark, the big Target dot, you see they use it actually on an animal. It's become their mascot. But it's throughout the store, from everything from the bollards that are outside the store when you park, right in through the shopping carts, the wall graphics, done very cleanly. And if you look at the products, very smartly displayed to lead you through the store so that you can clearly understand what the value proposition is in the store. And of course, the result is that they're cross-selling champions. They do very, very well. I can think of myself as a consumer, and I go into a Target store. I rarely leave with just the thing I went in for. There's usually something else I see as I'm walking through the space that makes me think that there might be something else I want to purchase. Now, how does that relate to the financial industry? The ability to have your menu out there in a number of different ways is very important, because what the customer might want to take advantage of on a given day is important to them on that given day, but there may be other things that they would need at a future date, and to let them know that you have those products and services available is really key, and how to make that tangible. The other example we looked at is Apple, a kind of an interesting franchise. If we go to the next slide, one of the things that strikes me is, of course, we have designers in our company. They would never use anything else other than a Mac. You'll never see them on any other kind of piece of equipment. We've got a big fight because our office people use regular IBMs, and our designers want to use the Mac system because of its flexibility. So what Apple has really done is they've created an emotional tie to their products and services that the customers are intensely loyal, so loyal that they'll pay $99 a year to go speak to the local genius at their store to get advice on how to use that particular product. So it's kind of interesting if we could flip that paradigm over in the financial industry and have people actually paying you for your financial advice. What that tells me is, while you're not charging them, clients feel that good advice, sound financial advice, and planning is extremely important to them. And if you can convey that in your retail space, you're really going a long way to creating a long-term relationship with your customer. Of course, the store design really reflects the product. It's hip, it's clean, it looks like the product. If you think about the iPod, very, very sleek design, but very easy to use. The store is the same way. The shopping experience also mirrors the product. They create the store so that all the product is arrayed on a table, and they actually design more space than a retailer would give to a store. And the reason they do that is they want people to stand around and look and see someone playing with a really cool device and being able to say, wow, that looks like it's really easy to use or fun. So they're connecting not just the client that's playing with the device, but they're letting other people see them use that product and service. So what they're doing is they're making the value of that product tangible to their customers. And of course, the attitude is you can't ask any dumb questions in an Apple store. I'm not 100% tech savvy, of course, and so I go in and ask questions, and they always make me feel like it was a good question and they've got great answers. So I really want to go back and speak to them about that. So retailers are very, very good at creating customer relationships. And what we really have here is that need to focus in on the fact that the customer is going to have an experience whether you design one or not. So the real question is, do you want them to have the experience that's just going to happen by accident, or do you want them to have the experience that you scripted, that you choreographed, a specific chain of events where you're putting your very smart staff together with the customer to answer those questions? So the design of the environment, the things you place in the environment become very important to that situation. And everything matters. Everything truly matters. We have a lot of voice today, and if you think of just setting up here, we were talking about simulcasts and podcasts and the way the music industry has changed. If you look at the financial industry, you have your external advertising, your direct mail, the website, the roles and behaviors of people at the call center and people in the branch environment, the point of sale material, and all of that really dictates to the overall experience. And the customer is very savvy at picking up on the fact that there may be disconnects in the way the brand and the way the products are projected on any of those different communication platforms. So you really, when we look at the communication platform, we don't want to look at just the branch. We want to see how all of this works together in the whole mosaic of communication. So what I put together for you are some requirements that we created for holistic communication. What do we need to communicate holistically to our clients? The first one is engage the senses, as many senses as possible. And we think, well, how many senses can you engage? You have sight, but if you think about the way your offices are laid out, is it properly lighted? Does it have a sense of security? Are the platform desk areas, are they too close to the teller line? So on a busy Friday, the line is backing up, so when someone's trying to have a private conversation, their financial information is being heard by other people. So the engaging the senses is very important in creating a sense of comfort. Something as simple as coffee. A lot of people have this challenge, do we do coffee in the bank? A lot of people do. Very hard to manage, it can get very messy. But coffee is a great one. Because if you think about your favorite day, Sunday morning, waking up, smelling that pot of coffee brewing, if you create that in the environment, it's a nice pot of coffee, the customer can smell it. They can feel it. It's warm in their hand. You can even use it as a sales tool. Coffee as a sales tool. Interesting. The customer's seated. You say to the customer, gee, before we start, can I get you a cup of coffee? And you don't point to the coffee. You go get the tray like you would do in the airport, and you bring the coffee to the customer. You present it to the client. Now you've just really gone a long way to ingratiating yourself. You're telling them your time is important, but you'll spend as much time with them as possible to understand what their needs are. So that's one of the ways we touch the senses. The other things are to match the needs and preferences with the experience. If you know what the customer's needs are and what they prefer, perhaps it's business banking, maybe there's an area in your space that's devoted to the small business entrepreneur, and maybe you tell that story in that small area. But once again, to Norman's point, it's about communicating that those things are available and that you really understand what those needs are. And then, of course, search for an appropriate point of differentiation. It can be a very small thing. It can be the coffee. Believe it or not, the differentiation can be the fact that you're always welcome in that space. What you need to do is just look at the brand, understand what that brand represents, what you feel that it represents, and try to make that payoff come true to the customer. Identifying the true spirit of the brand and infuse it into everything that's in the space. And I'm not talking about, the difference here is between badging and branding. Badging is, of course, putting your brand mark up all over the place, and that's not really what we're referring to. But if you're the blue bank or the red bank or the green bank, whatever your corporate PMS color is, maybe there's a color palette that gets developed to where as you renovate your branches, those colors start to come into the drapery and the furniture and the look and the feel of the space. And when you do that, that also is bringing the brand forward in a very significant way. Use the space as efficiently as possible. Certainly we know we need to have efficient use of space, but every branch that we design and build, what we hear from when we interview the people that are working at the staff, and those are the most important people we think that we interview, are the people that are working in the space, we find out that they need more storage space. Their equipment needs to be located correctly. So the way the space is laid out becomes very important at the end of the day to the way you end up communicating to your customer. And of course, develop a set of environmental tools which allow you to communicate to your customer, whether it's the way you set up your platform area, that there's a screen that can be turned to share information on a flat screen with the customer. Let me share with you how this is going to help you, and you go through your tutorial on the screen. Those types of things work very, very well in the whole mosaic of everything that is in the branch environment. And you know, at the end of the day, you take a look and you say to yourself, why is this important? Well, I can do without another sport coat or another sweater or another pair of trousers. I can't do without good financial advice. And because I have a good financial advisor, my 5-year-old grandson that my wife and I are very happy with, we're creating a college fund for him already. And that's because in conversation, casual conversation, having a cup of coffee with my banker, they said, you know, you ought to think about doing that. Because I noticed their picture of their grandson. There was a picture on the desk, showed my picture of my grandson. The next thing I know, he's talking to me about financial products that I could help my grandson with his college. So there's a lot of connections that can be made in the branch environment. Why is this important? Well, if your customer has one of your products, you've got a 17% retention ratio. If your customer has 4 of your products, you've got a 90% retention ratio. So at the end of the day, exposing the clients to all of those different products and services and making them aware that you have those is very, very important. There's a gentleman by the name of Paco Underhill, real interesting character. I don't know if anybody has read his book. It's called Why We Buy, The Science of Shopping. And Paco went into financial institutions and he shot 100,000 hours of customer behavior in branches. Fascinating to see what people will do and what they won't do, how they traffic through the space. And when we create a merchandising program and when you go back and look at your facilities, I would say if you can step back a little bit from your busy day and watch the customers use that facility, you're going to get some very important cues as to whether the facility is set up in its most advantageous configuration. There's three things that determine a sale that Paco found out from looking at these 100,000 hours of video. Depth, time, and touch. How far someone goes into the space, how long they stay in the space, and can they touch the product? Well, in a retailer, again, you've got a table out in front and you see people at the Gap and all the good retailers, Lord & Taylor, the wonderful retailers, beautiful sweaters. You go up and you touch it and you feel, wow, cashmere sweater, that's really nice. Well, how do you touch a financial product? The marketing communication that's in your branch and the way that conveys the values of your products and services is exactly the way that you allow the customer to touch and understand what the value of your products and services are. So the marketing communication is a great sales assist to the folks that are working in the space. I should mention now that also we're going to create a website, and a little talk about good communication. Got a little crossed up on our platform this morning. This was supposed to be full screen, so I will apologize if it's a little hard to see from the back of the room, but this will be made available on a website that we've set up for you, so at the end of this presentation you folks can go there and pull up the full presentation if you would like. But basically the design experience process is to map, design, and deliver. And what we really have is a kind of a gulf between the piece on the left, which is the brand promise, and then the piece on the right, which is really the payoff, which is the brand experience. So the steps that when we're creating a communication program for our clients, the steps that we take and the steps that you may want to consider are the fact that to script. What happens, when, and why. That's the choreography. How do you want the people to use the space, your staff and your clients? To stage. This is very theatrical. You want that to be able to be set up so that it's not an accident the way things happen. To rehearse. This is really training. We provide training, but to really empower the folks at the branch level to understand how to best position their products and services really is the rehearsal part. And then you have opening night, which is opening day. When you open your branches in the morning, you're ready for business, you're buttoned up, you're ready to really impress your clients and to add to the value that you bring to your clients. So what we do is we take, this process works regardless of the architectural configuration of your space. If you look at the way a branch is laid out, you have the external projection, which are the windows. That's really the invitation. And what we're really encouraging is that you use the entire facility, not just the exterior signage, but take a look at your windows. Take a look at the way the building is located on the site plan. Are there other opportunities on the exterior? The drive-up is very important, and we'll show you some examples of how other of our clients have leveraged those opportunities. The welcome. When you come in, is there something there that welcomes you, that gives you a sense that you really appreciate the customer being there? Is there something there that says that? We'll show you some of those. Hosting. If you think about your branch as your home, when your customer comes in, you want them to be seated. You want to get them a cup of coffee. You want them to be comfortable. You want them to really feel at home in your space. And to the Paco Underhill scenario, you want them to be able to spend as much time as they want to spend there finding out whatever they need to find out about their financial future. The referral transaction area, tellers were mentioned. That's a wonderful area. 70% of customers that use your facility use the teller line. So that tells me that the back wall on the teller line, is there artwork there? Are there pictures of ducks flying? Or is there that evocative message that is sharing with the client what you can do for them and how you can enrich their financial portfolio? And then the consultation area, which is, of course, the platform area, or what we refer to as the closing zone. That's really where you're knee-to-knee with the client. That's really where you're inspiring them and you're sharing very intimate details about their financial situation. I had a bank president say, Jay, clients will tell me everything. They'll tell me that their kid got braces and what's going on in sports, but then they start talking about the financial things and they get very, very quiet. They don't want that to be broadcast out. So is the environment conducive to having that private conversation? You may want to take a look at that when you go back to your facility. So as you can see, this is every branch USA, and you can see that very easily the invitation is anything outside, whether it's the drive-up. The welcome area is within 15 paces as you walk into the space. The host area is your central area, your lobby area, the waiting area. The referral area is the teller line, and the consultation, of course, is the platform. And you can apply this to any branch, again, regardless of configuration. But if you start thinking about it that way, you'll start really queuing up on what elements need to be in that particular space. A total communication program doesn't mean just the marketing elements. A lot of times what happens is we just focus on the marketing elements and we don't realize or we forget to tip our hat to the other things that are required to be in your space. And what I mean by that is you have 4 different communication levels: promotional, informational, directional, policy, and mandatory. Some are nice to haves, the marketing pieces. Some are have to haves, the mandatory, the things that the government tells you have to have. FDIC notifications, of course, a very important thing to customers, particularly today. But on the right side is how you apply those things. So what we do is we come up with a platform that develops vehicles that allows you to communicate all that other information, but we do it in a way that there's a floor version, a wall version, a ceiling version, and a counter version. And every branch does not get the same thing because all branches aren't exactly the same. But there is a version, so regardless of the fact that you have a lot of windows and no wall space, or a lot of wall space but a little floor space, that you have a program that can be applied regardless of the architecture, because one of the things that we fully understand and appreciate is that you're not going to go out there and completely architecturally reinvent your franchise. So you need to develop a program that'll fit in regardless of the architecture and the space. And again, very hard to see, but typically we take a floor plan, we go in and we do an analysis. You can do your own self-analysis and determine where those elements should be, mark them on the floor plan, and then you'll have a communication vehicle. What our floor plan does is that we assign little icons. And what's cool about the icons is they're live. So when you populate a floor plan with those icons, it automatically reports back to a database and it tells you where your mandatories are, how many banners you have, how many brochures. At the end of the day, that's a big cost savings, because when we analyze branches, community or tier 1, doesn't matter. We go into the back closet, we see stacks of brochures that never got out in the office. That's like stacks of money that you paid for. You never saw the light of day. And I think if you go look in your back rooms, you'll find out that there's quite a bit of those things there. So what we want to do is have just the right thing in the right place at the right time. There is a pretty significant cost savings to that. So now let's look at some examples of what our clients do. National City in Cleveland, Ohio, 1,400 branches. We rolled out the merchandising program in their whole network, and we realized when we were finishing up that we missed one really important thing. Their corporate headquarters on Euclid and 9th have this fabulous set of windows that band the entire bottom of the building. And I said, geez, we forgot something. And they asked, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, we did your whole franchise, and we forgot to focus on the flagship, and you've got these great windows. And they threw up a challenge to our designers. They said, well, we're the official bank of the Cleveland Browns, and we promote breast cancer awareness. We'd like you to make that work in one campaign. So I'm thinking, breast cancer awareness in football, how is that going to work? Well, we took their windows, and we got some photographs, authorized photographs of the Cleveland Browns. We photographed them wearing pink baseball caps. The client created a product which was, when you buy pink checks, a certain portion of those proceeds go to breast cancer awareness. So the windows were "Real Men Wear Pink." And I have to tell you that they wrote us a lovely letter back and said, Jay, we could not have paid for the PR that we got from using these windows, from the mayor of the town to the news media picking it up and making a big splash out of it. And as you can see, it creates 24/7 awareness, it attracts new customers, it projects the brand out, and guess what? That's now become a serial. They realize that by changing that, people are going to want to look. If you, the one piece about retail communications, if you don't change it out, it becomes wallpaper. So they change this every quarter, and people stop by to see what the next plot line in the story is going to be. So it's almost episodic in the way they're rolling out their communications, and they back off a little bit around the holiday time, and they do a little tip of the hat for joy and peace, and somehow they figure out how to wrap their product up into that. But it's been extremely effective. It was so effective that they said, Jay, we want you to go back in our traditional offices, which are exactly the same size as your offices, 1,700 square feet, 2,500 square feet. We want you to look at the windows there and tell us how to do those windows, maybe not in as grand a style. And if we go to the next page, you'll see some of the clients that we work for. You see the Real Men Wear Pink campaign up on the left. Sovereign just purchased a bank. Their logo is the lantern. So we thought, well, that's really obvious. There's a new light in the neighborhood. So we're bringing light to the neighborhood, and we worked on their windows. And of course, Bank of America, we do what's called the super graphic. But these applications really work well in the flagship branches and in the branches with extremely high traffic, walk-by and drive-by traffic. In the next slide, you'll see that you can make it work in a traditional branch. At M&T Bank from Buffalo, New York, their tagline is understanding what's important. They're very, very, very community-oriented. There's some envy here, guys, I got to tell you, that the big banks want to have what you have. They want to have that customer loyalty. They want to have that tie to the community, and they are really trying hard to make that happen. And in the case of M&T, we created some additional colors because what we find in the industry is that you've got the red bank and the blue bank and the green bank. They happen to be the green bank. And we said, well, anybody can be just green. So we created a green plaid, what we call the plaid. And as you can see, it plays off of various shades of green. And we wanted to differentiate the green even further because there are some other banks in the area that have green as well. So we created what we called the power band, which is yellow. So that goes on the window and that stays. The scrim that hangs in the window gets rolled up. It can be reused. They don't throw them away. They do 4 different ones a year. And then they use a hanging acrylic that has a simple poster in it. The thing to remember about windows, less copy is better, less is more. Project it out, really project that out. So if your branch is associated or closely aligned with a shopping mall or a strip mall, you have to know that there's all those people driving by, and instead of just making them wonder about your values and what you have available, you really want to project that out because you can make people come in and ask questions. On the next slide, you'll see in the invitation area, this also works in the drive-up. So this is a prototype that we did for SunTrust down in Florida. And as you can see, we've already started by, and we all know there's a lot of retirees in Florida. They've got a lot of money in their portfolios, not particularly good drivers. I looked at the islands, they drive up islands that they're usually painted yellow so you see them, all kinds of tire marks over it. I don't know how anybody drives up over a 8-inch piece of concrete, but so what we did is we said to them, well, when you design your branches, let's add a little green space. And they said, why would you do that? Well, when you pull the architecture of the branch out, it makes people make a wider turn into the space. We identified the area, the commercial teller and the regular teller, so that before people even turn the corner and get to the drive-up, they are already queuing up properly so that they're comfortable. And at the end of the day, it's about creating access, creating comfort, making people feel that to get to you is easy to do, to get to access your products and services. So as we go to the next slide, you'll see some things that are done in the drive-up. And these aren't things that have to cost a lot of money. We take existing elements that are already there. The ballards that protect the vacuum-assisted tubes. We put some brand wraps around those. We put insurance, mortgage. We did a surround for the ATM. We even went on the light poles on the outer piece of the property, and we just have the words investment, insurance, whatever that may be. You have to know when you drive there, that menu has been pre-announced before they even walk into the space. You know what they have available. So it is about good, clear communication. The welcoming function as you walk into the space, Webster Bank in Waterbury, Connecticut. Chairmen always make interesting requests. The chairman there said, I want to own the word welcome. I wasn't sure if it was for sale, but I thought we could probably create something that would create a welcome. So what we said was, in each of your offices, it would be nice to tip the hat to that area. In this case, on the left-hand side, Waterbury. They had done a brand review, and one of the things they did was they put a circle around their W for Webster Bank. So we created the Webster Welcome Wall, and it has the history of the bank, what they mean to the community. It has the photograph of Harold Webster Smith, and that worked great in the corporate headquarters. But of course the challenge is they don't want to spend that kind of money throughout their franchise. So the piece on the right is the portable version. Comes in 3 sections, has Mr. Smith on there, but it also has a place for the branch manager. And it has their values, what they call the Webster way. They take pride. They'll return calls before the end of the day. So this is really a welcome piece that ingratiates themselves to the community. It's not a product sell. It's a brand position, and it works very effectively. Also architectural challenges, environmental graphics. Here's Valley Bank, Valley National Bank. As you can see on the right-hand side of this photo, there's a column. It's holding up the building. You can't get rid of it. So the question is it just going to remain a column, or can you leverage that and do something with that column? We wrapped it with all of their product offerings. Then on the top of the soffit, we put all the photographs of people that look just like their customers with all the emotional things that works there. Stability and confidence, very important in today's in today's world, of course. And having those things in really broadcasts and communicates what your values are to your customers besides the merchandising displays. Literally the hottest thing that we're doing right now that everybody's asking us about are community walls. How do we do a community wall? How do you leverage it? How do you work with it? These are all different examples with different clients, and as you can see, they all take on the flavor of the particular client of a community wall. Typically, there's a backdrop in that. These are built in when you're building the branch, but I want to share with you that there are portable versions of this that we're rolling out. So what does the community wall do? Well, maybe there's a competition. Maybe one of the panels on the community wall speaks of a competition at the local elementary school where you're going to display artwork of the local kids, and people are going to come in and they're going to vote on them and put those names in a little box, and then you're going to give a gift certificate to the child that wins. You're going to draw people in from the school to look at to see who wins the contest, to look at the photographs. Maybe there's a little piece on there that appeals to the business class entrepreneurial. You just helped Joe's muffler shop succeed because he works with your bank. You helped him plan his muffler shop, and he's been very successful. So maybe there's a little piece there that tips the hat to the small business, and maybe you change that out quarterly. People love to see their name up and their business information up there. Maybe that's the place you allow that to happen. The third thing you can do in the community area is talk about your staff, that they're on the Rotary, that they serve on the PTA, that the combined knowledge of all the people in the branch is 102 years or 84 years when you put them all together. There's a richness there that needs to be conveyed, I think, to your customers, and there's something that makes them sticky to the community when you can use a community wall. So these are all kind of things you may not have been thinking about besides the typical merchandising displays that are really things that Michael will be speaking to later on, the public relations aspect of how you communicate and how very, very important that becomes. If we go to the next slide. Flagstar Bank, a Michigan bank, designed an office for them, but they decided they want to go to Atlanta, a thriving, growing area. So what we did is a brand translation. We took those elements, which we refer to as signature elements. We moved them down to the Atlanta area. It's the number 1 and 2 performing branches in their franchise right now, and they're planning on building some more in that area. But what you see here are Flagstar Freedom is their community wall. They had a thing called Flagstar Freedom, and it's their pledge. We will return all calls before the end of the day. We'll serve you in 10 minutes, or we'll put $5 into your checking account. All of those things are displayed on the wall. They have a digital communications there. They have a greeter. They have some of the more standard-looking merchandising components. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that we have another shot where we have a featured product. They decided that they wanted to focus the customer. The one thing I would tell you about retail communication and merchandising is, again, less is more. If you have too much, we've done intercepts with customers, and when there's a whole lot of things up in the space, and we ask the customer, what do you remember seeing? Very little. They don't remember very little at all. If you carefully choreograph and put a few things that you want the customer to focus on, and you ask them, the memory spikes way up. So what I would say is a clean environment, a focused environment is very important to have. And while we know that you have a lot of lines of business that want their shelf space, just be a little thoughtful about the way you put those out there, as in the case of the feature product wall. We mentioned coffee before. We were going to talk about technology a little bit. Typically, technology, really important. If you're going to use it as a tutorial, it's very important how you display that, because customers are going to go, I'm not supposed to touch that, or I don't know if I'm supposed to use that. So you want to invite the customer in. In this case, we combine the coffee service with the technology. So when you want to show somebody how easy it is to access your website, you can go and do a little tutorial. When you want to do the choreography where you're serving them coffee, on the other side is the coffee management. We've even gone as far as to put a refrigerator in there where we have branded coffee, branded water, I should say, which has all the feature, advantage, and benefits of your products and services. And on hot days, when you see people in line, the tellers and the platform people go grab a bottle of water and say, hey, can I give you a bottle of water? Would you like a bottle of water today? Well, they just walk out of the facility with your brand and with your product advantages and benefits in their hand, and they will remember that. So it's a very effective approach. In a new office, as you do de novo branches and new design builds, very easy to make them look good. You got a queuing mechanism, please wait here, but also while the person's in a captive audience mode in the teller line, high propensity that they're going to take a brochure. Using the back wall, and then another piece at a closer viewing distance here, give the customer something to take with them. When we ask customers, why did you take that brochure when we do intercepts, they say, well, I wanted to share that with my significant other. So having the connection to your website, having a business card available in that, and letting them take something with them, typically in some of those decisions, before they set up an appointment, they want to take something with them. So being able to leverage that at the front of the teller line is very important. But in a traditional office, and here you'll see a typical situation that you probably encounter in a lot of offices, in that it becomes an archaeological dig. There's a lot of things that get put up there from different campaigns, teddy bears and things that you can sign up for. This is a national bank. This is a bank with 700 branches. I won't name them, but you've got the clock up on the wall. Of course, you don't want to remind the client how long they just stood in line for, so that's not a positive thing to do. So we try to get all the clocks out of there if we can. And got a lot of visual confusion. So the real challenge here is, what do you look at? There's all kinds of things to look at. So if you go to the next slide, again, the less is more. Focusing in on one campaign, we really see that there's no way that client is not at least going to remember what he saw when he was in the space. Likewise, when we do customer intercepts, the other thing you may want to think about is being dimensional, being three-dimensional. When we intercept customers and ask them what they remembered in the space, a high percentage of memory goes to anything that's dimensionalized, anything that pops off. So we're using old technology. Right now we've got a puck system that we're sending to all our clients that have metal-based display programs, because they can put a three-dimensional piece that breaks the plane, and we have what we call a promo kiosk that you can put premiums on, things you're giving away, that you can have contests, that you can change out easy, that have banners that will attach to them. This is the same piece. Each one of these are exactly the same piece off the same platform, just dressed differently for what the particular bank wants to do with that particular piece. And likewise at the teller line, being three-dimensional. Pieces on the back wall that are three-dimensional that can pop off and change, can be mixed and matched. The piece on the front of the teller line, if you're promoting a rate, there's a little plate, and this piece actually it's a circle now, but it could be a square, it could be a star, it could be anything you wanted it to be, it could be in the shape of your logo perhaps. But it's something that pulls that off, and when we intercept customers, they remember it. It really gets sticky with what they saw when they're in the space. Digital, well, of course, there's the leading edge and the bleeding edge. Digital is coming way down in price. Screens are starting to get very reasonable, but there are still some challenges to it. While there are great statistics, 15 to 20% increase in cross-selling, particularly if you focus it on a specific product. It's very, very effective. Then it goes up to 30%. 42% you can get a lift in your brand recognition while you're in the space. And it accommodates multiple lines of business. So when everybody's beating you up saying, I want my product out there, I want my shelf space, digital is endless. But on the next slide, you'll see some of the things you need to think about: placement, content, and configuration. The placement piece is easy. You just have to look at the traffic flow and the dwell areas and where the customer goes, and you can figure out where that would be effective. We have a lot of clients now that have flat screens on the back of their teller line, and they put them there to reduce the perception of wait time. That's a pretty expensive babysitter. And the other unfortunate thing is they have CNN running on it. So right next to their brand, they're having how many people died in the war and where the tornado just hit. I mean, news by nature is not good. You really don't want to align that with your brand. So if you can focus, if you're going to do digital, our recommendation is to focus it on the brand, the bank, the history, the community, the products, the services, the people that are in the space. So the content becomes very, very important. The last one is the configuration. Is it networked or is it not networked? Most of the IT people will tell you, oh, I don't want you taking up too much of my pipeline. And by the way, there's security issues, so I don't want that to happen. So you may want to think about just using a memory card. I mean, memory cards are very inexpensive. You can load the campaign on. You send posters to the branch, so why not send a memory card to and the correspondent says, put the red memory card in, put the blue memory card in, and you can run that. I get asked a lot of questions about sound. Try to not do sound because you'll drive the people in the office crazy with the repetition. But digital can work very well, and it can be done inexpensively. And on the networking side, if you want to network, one of the workarounds we've done to not have to go through the internet system for our clients is if you have a cable box in your branch, you can bring digital into the branch through the cable box, and it will skirt the issue of security and taking up too much space in the pipeline. The platform area, once again, This young lady, very busy, a lot of things that are on her desk. This is a traditional office. If you go to the next slide, again, less is more. You want to focus in. When the people are seated in that seat, just like the teller line, they're in a captive audience mode. That person typically will get up at least once during that transaction to get a document, to get something signed, to get some additional information. And that person is sitting there looking at that back wall. So the question is, are they looking at, as I said, the ducks flying, or are they looking at the evocative message that tells them what value you can bring in their for their particular life stage? And this looks like a very simple picture, and if you think about it, it is, but there's an awful lot going on in this picture. When you think about the design of the space, not just the merchandising elements, but if you think about the design of the space, when you go to a restaurant, you notice how they put that wonderful candle in the middle of the table, and you've all done this. If the candle's not lit, you ask the person to come over and light it. It creates a little glow. It creates your space in that restaurant. Well, that's what we're doing here with a simple pendant light. And instead of using this type of lighting that we see here, commercial lighting, we want to go to a little bit more something that you might see in your home. It's a little more intimate, so it creates a space. We use round because if you see most offices have square desks, well, someone always sits at the head of a square or a rectangular table. On a round surface, nobody's at the head of it. It's equal all the way around. And we notice the difference between Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. Dunkin' Donuts is grab and go. Starbucks is come and stay. Paco Underhill says depth, time, and touch. How far you go into the space, how much time you spend in the space. So as you see, these chairs look more comfortable than the chair the person in the branch is using. So you're inciting them to stay and be comfortable. And the technology on the flat screen there can be used to be turned around to share, because that's a wonderful word, sharing. Let me share with you. Not let me show you. Let me share with you. So part of the choreography and the training is the way you speak to the customer. There's a big difference between showing and sharing. And sharing is a much softer and a much more collaborative approach. The last piece I have here for you is something we learned from Disney. We partnered with the Disney Institute. We bring some clients down to Disney once a year, and we have Disney come up and speak at our facility once a year. And what we learned from Disney is there's this fabulous place underground at Disney. The Magic Kingdom is everything above ground, but below ground, there's a whole city going on down there. And you don't get to see it when you go to the park, but when you partner up and pay $50,000 to work with the Disney Institute, they take you downstairs under there. And what you find out is that they're very theatrical, and they have a thing called onstage and offstage. And when you're up in the Disney Village, you're on stage. And when you're down below, getting your uniform on or getting your costume, you're off stage. But they never fail when you're off stage to remind the people that are on stage what the values are, what they need to do when they're on stage. So that's what Disney does off stage. For banks, if you think about it, we do a very simple grid system. This goes in the back office. This is not out in the front of the space. So it's building relationships. What are your values? What is your mission statement? Does the person, everybody in the branch understand that? Are they all marching to the same tune? So that piece can be there. To the right of that, there's a little whiteboard where when people meet their sales goals, you can write them a little personal message on there saying, "Great job, Susie, met all your goals." That goes on there. In the lower left, we put the map of the branch, where all the merchandising pieces go with their icons. So you always know you have the message up in the right place at the right time. And on the right-hand side is a place for you to put the sales goals. This formalized in the back office reminds the staff what they need to be thinking of when they're on stage, out in the front, in the lobby and the platform area. And it also reminds them that they have goals and that it's something that you're working together as a team. So this works very, very effectively. Just some things to think about when you're implementing a program. One is you need two programs. You need one that works in the de novo, but when you look at if you're building a new branch, and it's always going to be shiny and great when you build the new facility. But are those things transportable to the existing network? You want to come up with things that can be exported from the real nice new shiny branch into the existing branch so that you have some of that continuity. Establish demerchandising. What you take out is as important as what you put in. When we roll out a merchandising program, we identify the items that you want to take out. Plastic plants, gumball machines, tent back and easel back cards, all of those things that add visual confusion and visual noise, and we don't put them in the back room. We take them out of the branch, because if you put them in the back room, I guarantee you they will migrate back out into the space. So if you're going to come up with your cleaning list, your Operation Clean Sweep, let's call it, if you're going to come up with those things, make sure that the facilities folks or somebody comes around, takes them, and moves them out of the space. And then lastly, the program training. Very, very important to get your folks together and empower them with why you're doing the merchandising, what the effort's all about, right down to why things are placed where they're placed. It's great to show them examples. In my training, I always show examples of what retailers do. When they leave the room, I want them to be mini retail experts. I guarantee them that when they leave the space, they will never go into another retailer and think about it the same again. And if we all think about it, you know the ones that grow and the ones that disappear, the ones that get it are the ones that the franchise grows. The ones that don't get it are the ones that you go and you see space for lease somewhere. So very important to look at that in the context of your branch network. And finally, so we have qualitative and quantitative results. The qualitative results are to improve the customer experience, to differentiate yourself from the competition, to provide shelf space for all of your products and services in the branch, to create a professional and uncluttered look. People equate neatness with accuracy. And if there's anything that people want their banks to be today, is concise, accurate, very specific in your practices, very buttoned up. And then when you do that, you'll end up improving the overall communication of your entire facility from the outside through the inside. And then the quantitative results, typically when we ask clients, and a lot of our clients measure their programs, a 10 to 15% lift from doing a properly placed merchandising program is minimal. A minimal thing, when we ask clients 2 products per branch per month, typically that'll pay for itself in a year. It should pay for the merchandising effort in a year's time. The cross-selling goes way up. So we go back to the 1 product, 17% retention ratio, 4 products, 90% retention ratio. It increases inquiries about your products and services. And also, interestingly enough, customer satisfaction goes way up. Customers don't like a lot of visual confusion. If you think about when you travel and you go into an airport and the signage isn't good, you get a little frustrated. Where do I go? Where should I stand? How do I get the bus? Where's my rental car? Your facility is just as important. And while we think it's very simple because we work there every day, we're in that space every day, it doesn't mean that the customer is aware that you have safe deposit boxes and all those types of things that are available to them. And also done properly, a 10 to 20% reduction in waste. And those are the brochures and the things that I mentioned end up being in a closet, never seeing the light of day. We want to put the things up that are significant. We want to change it out frequently and make it relevant to your customer base. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to open it up to question and answer. Obviously, our company is very passionate about the branch space. It's your store. It's where your brand and you touch the customer, and we think it's a very important space to creating long-term relationships with your customer base. So we talked about a lot of stuff, covered a lot of things. Didn't know if there were any questions. Yes, I've got a young lady just gave me a website. It wasn't ready when I was leaving, so she just emailed me. And do you have that there?
Yep. www.brandpartners.com/njbma.pdf.
One thing I forgot to mention is that Steve records all of our meetings.
Yes.
And we have all of the meetings for how many years now, Steve?
About 4 years.
If you can go to the bank marketing website.
Love to.
That will be available forever, right?
Yes.
This meeting will be there, so
Okay.
probably within a
Wow.
month or so.
I'm in a time capsule.
Yeah, so you can also not only see this meeting, but all the other meetings that we've had will be on the bank marketing website.
And I'll leave some cards here. You'll see we're a little different as a company. We started as a privately owned company. Tom and Jim Willie brothers became brand partners. We don't charge for consultation. We're very, very different that way. We're happy to chat with you. Please call us. We've got a whole lot of experts that work in all different aspects of our industry, and it really is our desire to push the entire industry up. So if you have questions, challenges, you want to chat about something, just give a call. We've got myself, a lot of other folks that are happy to talk to you about that. Appreciate it. Any other questions?
When you're looking at branches when you're going in,
Yeah.
what do you think the biggest weaknesses or obviously you can redo the whole branch,
Right.
or you can do some quick fixes.
Sure.
What would be the 1 or 2 most important things that you would recommend that a bank would look at for their branches?
That's a great question. The number 1 thing is access. Is it hard or easy to get into the space? I mean, looking at the parking lot is it difficult to get in. The other thing is the way you project your brand. We see a lot of people use banners. They'll take these big vinyl banners and they bungee cord them. And the last thing you want to associate with your brand is something that's temporary, and banners are temporary. So you put your brand on the banner, it really doesn't have that permanence, that solid look and feel. So the way you project that, to do that in the windows can be, once you have the acrylic piece or the scrim already developed, very inexpensive to do, as inexpensive as bungee cording a banner out in the drive-up somewhere. But you have, invariably, every branch has that ubiquitous brick wall with nothing on it, right after the drive-up window. And when people are queued up in their car, they're also in a captive audience mode, particularly in peak hours. So using the facility, but using it in a way, the island merchandiser banners, we have all those types of things that are very effective to just make sure that when you put your brand out there and your marketing message, that it's visible from a long viewing distance, that it has a sense of permanence to it, even though it's changeable, and that you create access that's easy for the customer to get in and park. And it may be something like restriping your parking lot. To make sure they understand, or putting the lawn monuments on to make sure how they queue up. When you make it difficult, people typically will say, "I'm not going there. It's too tough to get in and out." So really look at the entry egress.
We find that many towns have ordinances. If you try and put a banner up in the building,
Right.
you can't do it.
Right.
When you're doing these types of programs,
Yes.
do they generally bypass the local banner ordinances, or what's your experience there?
Another great question. It depends where you put the banner. If you put them in the window, of course, they can't say anything because that's your space. But for some reason, in the drive-ups, when the overhang goes over, that is almost looked at as it's part of the interior. Of course, we know that it's not. Rarely objected. Now, if you put some of the things out on your front lawn, they're going to object to them. But if you use your drive-up space, typically, no, we don't typically ask permission. And I can tell you, having done tens of thousands of them, I can think maybe one or two times in a very extremely affluent community, and you can tell those communities because they don't even let McDonald's have the arches. They've got a wooden sign out front.
Yeah.
So you know where pretty much if you take that as a cue, you know where you can and you can't do it. If it's under that canopy in the drive-up on your wall or on your drive-up island, typically they don't object to it.
Same go for window banding?
The window banding, they allow you, typically it's like 20% they'll allow you to use of the overall space to do your brand. If it's just a very subtle piece on the bottom of the window, typically they haven't objected to it. I can tell you that one of our large clients, we do a survey before they decide to do the windows. The survey is done from a vendor partner of ours that calls and finds out all the regulations in that area, so that when they go to negotiate with the landlord, they or whoever they're going to be buying the building from, perhaps, they understand what the rules of the road are before they have the conversation. And they actually now use that to leverage whether they're going to go into that space or not. And they say, well, if you're not going to let us use the windows, Lord & Taylor down the window has space as well. You know, you got to let us be on equal footing. So they plead the case using the other retailers as an example.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation by the New Jersey Bankers Association's Bank Marketing Committee, produced by ProfessionalPodcasts.com. For information, call us at 856-751-5491 or send email to steve@professionalpodcasts.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.